Welcome back to the Gender Inclusivity in Sports podcast. Today, the theme of this episode is the lack of respect for non-male athletes in male-dominated sports. Our guest today is Emily Mandamin, an 18-year-old shooting guard for Highland College in Freeport, Illinois. She's part of the Cougars women's basketball program and has been playing basketball since the age of 12. Emily has her eyes set on playing pro basketball overseas in the WNBA. We're looking forward to her perspective this episode.
Hi everybody, I'm Emily Mandamin. I'm currently in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, although I did go to college and attend my first year at Highland Cougars. I was the shooting guard over there and had a great first season. I'm currently in the process of transferring to another school in Kansas, Butler College actually. And I guess that's kind of the inside scoop. Nobody really knows that, so here's the big deal.
Okay, thank you for giving us that exclusive info. Now, Emily, you are pursuing a professional basketball career, if I'm right?
Yes, that is correct. That's been my dream.
Okay. So the topic we're having today is just about, the whole theme of this podcast has been just the gender inclusivity in sports. The topic we're covering today is the lack of respect for non-male athletes in mostly male-dominated sports. And I feel like the best one that you can relate to is basketball, you know?
Yeah.
There's always been like a heavy conversation online on the status of the WNBA, the respect it receives from the general audience, the marketing that these organizations kind of give it, and how it's kind of seen as like a lesser form of sport compared to just the NBA, even though these are athletes of the highest level playing their absolute best. From your perspective as somebody who hopes to be in the WNBA, how does that make you feel? Does it discourage you? Does it make you even want to do better, or maybe want to change things? Please give us your opinion.
Yeah, so personally, I look at it as an opportunity to educate people and use it as fuel, I guess, and motivation to keep wanting to expose our female athletes to bigger and brighter opportunities. You often hear people talk about how the WNBA doesn't make as much money because people don't view, but people don't get the opportunity to watch these things on TV. So I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, totally. I can agree that even from research, it's pretty evident that these basketball commissions don't really market and push the WNBA as they do the NBA, even regardless. Putting it out there for more people to be able to see would definitely draw in a larger audience. I feel like the perfect example of an organization is not really taking female athletes seriously is the whole situation with the March Madness tournament that happened, where we saw that one of the biggest college tournaments for both women and men's basketball, where women weren't really getting the equipment they deserved, right? And yeah, and they did make a big show of giving the women the equipment they deserved. If were it not for the public outcry on the kind of inequality there. So do you think that maybe taking a more public stance on these things is important to kind of getting these organizations to change, or should we just hope that in the future maybe having more better athletes will change things? What's your perspective on that?
I think that the power of social media is amazing, especially in our generation. I think we need to start vocalizing and talking about these issues, these inequalities that we face, because it's so often, but we don't hear about it as much. So I guess that's the biggest thing. And I think the athletes in the NCAA tournament did what they should have done and took to social media and got what they deserve. And unfortunately, they shouldn't have to fight for it. But
Yeah, I just want to talk about like your experience kind of before, now you're a whole college athlete who got a full scholarship, full right to play basketball. Before, when you're in high school, when you're a kid, what were the opportunities? Would you attribute your success to the opportunities you got, or maybe the lack thereof? Was it easy to get access to facilities? Were all your coaches really encouraging? What was your experience like coming up when it came to, as a woman and an Indigenous woman at that, playing basketball?
honestly, it was pretty difficult. I found that there wasn't much opportunities as being an Indigenous woman, especially as an Indigenous athlete. There wasn't many places that I felt really welcomed or that I was kind of encouraged to be at. So that was kind of the most difficult part. And I often found that I was kind of just on my own, trying to find ways to get myself better. And I guess that's ways that really motivated me to be the athlete that I am today. And constantly getting cut from certain teams or telling that I wasn't good enough or that I wouldn't amount to things kind of motivated me and wanted me to get better and show people that I can really be something that they didn't think I could be.
Okay. And your story in itself is a success story, in all honesty, but that's not the reality for other indigenous women in the space. How do you think, like the systems in place could have really helped you even be better, or helped other people who are in your same situation? Like, what were the specific ways that honestly would have just made you, uh, would have like taken away these hurdles or eliminated them?
Honestly, I think having somebody to look up to would have really helped me and kind of helped navigate my way through recruiting or through like what teams I should join and what teams I should play for. And I was caught in oftentimes I'd make one team and I'd make two teams at the same time and I'd have to choose which one I'd have to play over. And it really sucked because at one point I made an all native team that I really would have enjoyed playing with just because it's who I am and it's where I come from. But unfortunately, I had to choose a different team over that. And I look back and it's one of my biggest regrets, honestly. And I wish the other coaches would have been more inclusive for me and more opening to me playing for both teams. So I think the biggest thing would be having encouraging coaches that understand where you come from and understanding how hard it is to get where you are and that just want to help. And, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make sure these kids don't go through the things I went through, whether that be racism or discrimination. And it's just trying to help these kids because they're all athletes. They all have big dreams and they should be allowed to chase them.
Yeah, so you've already like now it's evident that there's already like a huge disparity when it comes to being a woman and an athlete, and then add to the fact that you're indigenous in Canada, and that's kind of your heritage is it's kind you had to make the choice between being yourself through your heritage and expressing that through your sport, and just wanting to be better and have and like you said, your coach could have encouraged you to play for both teams, and that would have really helped you, especially with your own identity. Do you think that, on top of that, there's a whole, did you have access to facilities? Do you think that money and class kind of also could have affected your access to opportunities? Was it easier because maybe finances weren't a problem, or did that also affect your journey?
I definitely think finances played a big part into where I am today. I often had to go through different types of organizations and stuff to get funding or ask around for people to help me pay for certain teams or travel to these tournaments. And it kind of you don't want to be known as that kid, right? That always has to ask for things. And so that made me really frustrated and kind of hurt that I had to go out of my way and do these things. I always felt that different kids got to work out with different trainers because they could afford for these things or pay for certain gear or pay for extra gym time. And it was like I kind of never had the opportunity to do that. I was sneaking into gyms. I was trying to find ways to get coaches to like help me pay for certain things just because my family at the time struggled and couldn't afford these things. And they all, of course, my family was trying to be supportive in any way that they could, but there's sometimes you just gotta feed. You got to put food on the table and things like that.
Yeah, so even going through all that, not being able to afford stuff, having to struggle with your own traditional identity, and that being kind of a barrier to your love for basketball, and on top of that, being a woman, and now you've really made it. You've gotten somewhere. You've gotten a full ride scholarship. You're playing in the U.S. and like, sorry to say, but like things are just gonna like, do you think that things are just gonna get harder, or are you hopeful towards the future, or what are some of like the hindrances you're afraid of, or that you've even noticed yourselves now that you're already playing at the college level? Like, have things changed? Are they easier now than they were earlier, or is there just more?
I didn't mean to cut you off there, but I find
Okay.
things are going to be harder in different ways. I don't think things will be harder financially, but I think things will be harder um, racially and the way that I identify, just because it's not common for Native athletes to go to the States and succeed over there. So I find I'll face more discrimination down there. And that's kind of the thing that I'm least hopeful for, but I'm hopeful that I will have a great community behind me and that people will stand behind me and have my back no matter what. And
Yeah.
I don't know if you're familiar with Ethan Bear, he plays for the Edmonton Oilers. Currently, they just lost. They got swept by the Winnipeg Jets, which is like great, but he unfortunately faces a lot of discrimination. He's the only Native athlete on the team, and there are a lot of racial slurs being thrown at him all around social media. And I'm scared that when I get to that point, will I face those things? And so that's a big
Mhm.
thing I'm trying to figure out how to navigate and deal with currently.
Okay, and that's just also just speaking to your experience as a native, um, as a native person. On top of that, what are some of the fears or barriers that you're afraid of that you've seen other with female athletes in the WNBA, or playing internationally that you're afraid of facing, or that you're hopeful have already changed? Like, what's your perspective on that as a woman?
As a woman, I think I'm kind of scared to hear all the backlash because at the end of the day, we just want to play. We just want the same respect as the males have. We go out there, we play every single just as hard as they do. We go, we work, we wake up early, we work out, we stay late. It's in our blood, it's in our DNA. We're athletes, and unfortunately, we're just yearning for that own respect, you know. And it's kind of hard that we have to consider different ways to make money, whereas male basketball athletes get to just depend on the NBA revenue and things like that, whereas we kind of have to figure out where else we can get money because we don't make that much to begin with.
Yeah. What's your opinion on the rhetoric, and kind of like the opinions floating around that organizations should take towards making the WNBA more accessible, such as like lowering the rims, or do you think that the game itself needs to change, or the organizations themselves need to take more of an aggressive stance when it comes to kind of pushing for the WNBA as an organization, and as a sport with athletes that play at the highest level? Like, what do you think would be like the best way forward? Like, for it just kind of like kind of quench or quell the whole conversation online, for it to be more accepting.
I think in a way to get more action and more revenue towards the WNBA would be not to lower the rims or anything like that because we're athletes. We played on the same rim as men do ever since we were younger, and it's unfortunately it's not where it should be. And I think that the organizations should make a tougher and more aggressive stance and to get people to watch these games and everything like that because these are professional athletes, the best of the best, and we need to respect that we deserve.
Okay. And sorry, now I'm just gonna take it back to your journey to getting here. What would you say things that have like really helped, like people, organizations, programs, anything that has really like helped your journey be easier, or even just helped you in general, as an athlete, or as a woman, like anyway, that any positive things that you think um, would be good for like the whole system as a whole, moving forward on a large scale.
On a larger scale, I think that you can have more inclusive coaches that really want to get to know you personally. I was grateful and thankful enough to have a coach, head coach Eric Sung, at Dakota at my high school that really understood where I came from and kind of pushed me and um, he really encouraged me to chase my traditional background and things like that and would let me go to traditional ceremonies and things like that rather than go to basketball because he understood how important that was to me and how much I was involved in my community and he's always supported me like that 100%. So I think having advocates like that, people that want to push you and accept you for who you really are is so important in the basketball world because it's just like that's who you are. You know, aside you're not just a basketball player. I'm an Indigenous woman as well. I come from a great heritage, and so I think having that having that person push me and always be there for me was so important to my growth and my success as a woman, not only an athlete.
Yeah, nice. So you're the coaches that you were lucky enough to have like really good coaches that pushed you, and that weren't like a hindrance or didn't give you any negative form of pushback for you just pursuing your goals. What would you say your experience was with fellow athletes who were male? When you during your like junior league times, not just now, your peers that over your male peers.
I found that my male peers often got more exposure to college recruitment just because of social media, and there was more people out there looking to, I guess, help them get out of Winnipeg, whereas kind of felt like I had to do that on my own. And I often felt like they got more opportunities to work out with some of the best players and some of the best coaches rather than I did, just because they were looked at as more competitive or more serious about certain things, which was unfortunate because they would be in the same gym, same times that I was, and sometimes I'd be there even more. And so I found that the kind of guys got more respect than I did. So that really that made me work harder, although it frustrated me just as much.
Yeah. And that was just your experience here in Winnipeg. Have you had like during your first year when you're in Freeport, Illinois, playing for the Highland Cougars? Did you have any form of experience with other male athletes? I'm not familiar with how it is there, but what did you say? Like, what was your experience there like? Was it, did it give you hope for how things would be in the future, or like, kind of what's your perspective on that?
My time at Highland was really good. Unfortunately, there was some disparities between the two, the female basketball team and the male basketball team. I'd find that the male basketball team got more serious treatment, and I'm sure they got more financial help than the women's did. We'd had to fundraise for our own things, and I found that they got some more things than we did, and it was kind of frustrating. They had more weight training opportunities than we did. They got times to work out with different coaches, and they got different college recruitment help than we did, and it was kind of frustrating to see and acknowledge that because when I go over there, I'm like, oh, like college basketball, like, we're probably taking this really seriously, and it's unfortunate that I
Yeah.
got to see both sides of it.
Okay. And what do you think these athletes themselves, these male athletes, your male peers, could be doing to really kind of um, push against that whole inherent like chauvinistic like attitude towards, like automatically male athletes are getting more attention. What can these male athletes do to kind of be supportive of, and acknowledge like this whole problem that's going on when it comes to the lack of respect from all male athletes?
I think the male athletes can really play an advocate and a big part in talking about it, not only bringing awareness, and I think they could be and doing things hands-on, whether that's helping fight for help protest or things like that, or talk about the disparities between the two. And I think that they could really play a big part in being an ally and helping us get to where we want to be. Because at the end of the day, we are athletes, and that's all we are. We're the best of the best. We do what we want, and we do what we love.
Um, can we just talk about like the kind of the community, the spectator aspect of basketball and how it is, and like the community surrounding, whether it's the fans of college basketball, the fans of high level basketball, and NBA and WNBA, and kind of like the conversations that are happening online when it comes to, the direct comparison of the NBA and WNBA. Do you think that like the comparison is would be healthy if the WNBA had more exposure, or do you think we should just cut out the comparison in general and treat them as this is women's basketball and this is men's basketball, or should we just go this is all just basketball, and should there be different standards for measuring whether it's the level of skill or the entertainment value? Like, what do you think like spectators in general need to keep like in mind when it comes to how they view NBA games or WNBA games?
I think at the end of the day, it's just basketball. Athletes are athletes. They're in the WNBA. They're in the NBA just because they're the best, and they produce numbers, they produce wins and things like that. And so I think that's the most important thing to look at. They shouldn't be looking at how much money they bring in, how athletic they are, how they dunk and how they do layups. Like it should just be at the end of the day, looking at the numbers, looking at the stats, looking at wins and things like that. Because at the end of the day, it's just basketball, and it needs to be treated like that instead of comparing, oh, men are better than women, women are better than men. Like it should just be basketball.
And with that being said, what's your sense on the whole pay gap that exists between the NBA athletes and the WNBA athletes when it comes to, since while the NBA does give them a salary, I understand that athletes also get salary from sponsorships from different brands. Do you think sports brands in general also, like, there needs to be a more aggressive stance into their involvement with the WNBA? I'm not quite familiar with it. Would you mind giving a perspective on that?
Yeah, I believe that also sponsorships need to play a bigger role and bigger advocates for our women. And I'm pretty sure the NBA pays about like I think it's 49 to 51% of revenue towards their athletes, whereas I think the number, forgive me if I'm wrong, is 22.8 that the WNBA pays towards their athletes. And I think that's pretty outrageous considering they're professional athletes. They need to get paid what they need to get paid, and you can see the disparities. You can see that one pays more than the other, and it's frustrating. And I don't really know why. And if you're arguing that it's just because they're men, then I don't think that's really fair, especially in this generation, this day and age.
So we all know like kind of like the negative connotation towards the WNBA is rooted in, some misogynistic values. So do you think when it comes to seeing actual change, is it should it start when it comes to like education, or whether it's like just having these organizations not even like lean into like what these misogynistic audience members are saying or these spectators are saying, and just like really just properly treat all the athletes equally, and then hopefully we'll see the conversation change. Or what do you think like is like the best way forward? Like we want to help female athletes and or non-male athletes, sorry, get more exposure, get more opportunity, succeed. Like what do you think is the best way forward for that?
I think treating both athletes the same, both female and male, I think that would kind of not, I think that would help end the conversation and kind of help give the respect that the women deserve. I think that'll end the misogynistic conversations, hopefully, just because the women play such a big part in advocating for themselves to get paid financially and to get the respect they deserve on and off the court. And so I think if both leagues treat it that way and treat them with equality, and I think, we're making some great steps forward.
Yeah. So really just like just trying to get a summary of where we're at. In your experience, you've faced pushback for just being a woman and being an indigenous woman at that. Some coaches were not helpful and made you have to choose between your love for basketball and your own heritage. And some coaches really just helped you embrace both of them. And to you, that was like the key factor to your success, having people who properly, push you to be better and just wanted what was best for you from the start and not what they thought was best for you. And kind of seeing how, you mentioned how even from your peers, like they barely have any power, but they're just taking in the advantages they get without really like calling out, like there's a problem here. We both work hard. Where are they getting the opportunities? So with that being said, like through your experiences, like what are you hoping to do? Like, or do you think that you're just gonna keep working on your craft and being better, and then hopefully like the people who need to make change are, the men in this situation? Or are you gonna be also like doing your thing? Or what's your plan for the future in terms of like this whole situation?
My plans for the future are to work at my craft and be better, and obviously have a decent social media following. So I want to continue being an advocate and continue talking about the disparities between the two, and how unfair it is, I guess, that we are female athletes and we work just as hard as the males do. So I think I'm going to continue being an advocate for that, and also continue being an Indigenous advocate that for my people and things like that, because I think it's so important for our young women to see somebody succeeding, because I never had somebody to look up to like this. So I find if I can be that person for them and I can help them any way I could, then I will. And whatever they need from me, that's what I'm planning on doing.
Yeah. Speaking of role models, you've mentioned how having a role model will have really helped you have a more sense of direction when you're pursuing your goals, and how you want to be that role model. That being said, like when it comes to, for example, young athletes, do you think that, um, they should integrate more women and men, non-male and male athletes together when it comes to at the lower level when it comes to basketball or any sport? Or do you think that having separate spaces and having just spaces specifically tailored for you know these non-male athletes, or anybody outside the gender binary, whether they're or even just women, do you think that's just as important? Or what do you think the way forward should be?
I think it's both very important. I found it very safe and refreshing to have my own space and play with my female basketball players and things like that. But I also found it was really nice to go to the local YMCA and play and pick up games against the guys, just because um, I felt like I could get more contact and things like that with the male athletes and hear what they were saying and get feedback from them. Just because I think as basketball players, it's easy to get feedback from other players and things like that. So that's why I really liked playing with the men as much as I like playing with the women, because they both bring different aspects to the games that I found really helped build me as a player. So I think
Yeah.
having both is very important.
Yeah. uh, so you've talked about all your defining experiences. Is there anything you'd like to add just for like anybody who's like in your position now or is in the situation that you were in the past? What would be kind of your message to them when it comes to, let's say they don't have like someone in their corner when it comes to, um, being fully supportive of them? What would be like the best, what do you think would be the best way forward for them to kind of get to where you are or to get to their goal?
It might be tough, it might be hard, but I think the thing that I want to tell these kids is that sometimes you just got to put your head down and believe that you'll get to where you want to get. Um, my dad always told me ever since I was young that it was going to be a lonely journey and that I'd be the only one on it. and it's kind of been that way ever since I was young. But it's the reality of it, because sometimes you have to chase your dreams, and you're going to be looked at like an outcast, and you just need to put your head down, believe in what you do, love what you do, and just work.
Okay. Nice. Is there any organizations or people you like to like give a special like shout to that are really about the message that you're also kind of preaching here and kind of spreading here about promoting like uh just hard work over everything, and hard work being like the key factor determining one's success rather than gender identity or heritage.
Yeah, I'm really thankful for the people that I guess I've played with and grew up with, and I'm grateful for my high school coach, Coach Sung, and I'm grateful for my college coach, Blake Becky, and everything. They've all given me opportunities, and and they all believe in the things that I could do as an Indigenous athlete coming from a small little reserve. So I think just doing that, and Boys and Girls Club kind of helped me a lot too, financially growing up with opportunity to play sports and travel and go to these tryouts and things like that. So I'm super grateful for organizations like that that step up and help include kids in sports.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I can even speak to that because I do know Coach Sung, but in my experience, though, it was more of a creative field where he taught me photography and stuff. Yeah, and also the Boys and Girls Club. I've gotten to travel too, thanks to them. Yeah, so looks
Yeah.
like they're helping a bunch of people out here. Okay, and I guess that's it. Thank you so much for coming on.